Hey people, it is Friday, March 21st. It is currently 5 p.m. and about 8 degrees Celsius. And I'm looking up at the historic Isabella Hotel, which is located here on the corner of Sherbourne Street and Isabella Street. So there's a look down Sherbourne, and Isabella Street either begins or ends right here, depending on which way you're coming or going along its length. But I'm going to be heading west from what I would consider its starting point in this case here, almost to where it ends at Yonge Street, but not quite. I'll stop just short of Yonge Street and make my way down to Maitland Street south, and eventually I'll make my way onto Mutual Street. So we're going to be basically walking around the east side of downtown here, along some not often explored residential streets. I would say Isabella Street is one of the more interesting residential side streets in this part of downtown. It does have some other interesting buildings. It's not purely residential. There's a bit of a retail stretch just before Yonge Street that we'll take a look at. But it's mainly lined with mid-rise and high-rise apartment buildings and old historic townhouses. There's a smattering of some other types of businesses here and there, as you can see. And yesterday was the first day of spring, but today's the first full day of spring. And it's a bit colder temperature-wise than yesterday, but it's sunny, so it actually feels a bit more pleasant than yesterday. Yesterday was a overcast, windy day. Felt a bit chillier. There's another building. I'm not exactly sure what this is. ETFO. Oh, here we go. Elementary Teachers Federation of Ontario. Okay. And that was a college of sorts over there, the next building. You can see some of the old historic homes. A lot of these have redevelopment notices posted on them for some very tall new towers. I think several towers are proposed for the next couple of blocks of Isabella Street. And for some reason, several of them have a proposed height of 69 stories. I'm not sure if that's significant in some way. That seems to be a repeating factor among new development proposals around here. Maybe they can't build any higher than 69 stories. So they're all just maxing out as much height as they can get. So that'll be taller than those buildings you see over there, which are about 50 stories in height. Kind of nice looking townhomes here, a bit more modern. They still have their Christmas wreath on their door. And same with that door. Maybe they're not Christmas wreaths, because that door has one as well. What's going on here? They've all decided to go in together with their wreaths on the doors. And another interesting building across the street. walking directly into the sun. Maybe once I get to the other side of Jarvis Street here, I'll cross the street. It looks a bit shadier since it's lined with tall apartment buildings. Watch out for the crazy Toronto drivers. And here's the Rogers head office. I just learned recently that CDTV is relocating their production facilities to this building from their building at Yonge and Dundas, where they've been located for the last 15 plus years. Local TV station. I thought their location at Yonge and Dundas was pretty awesome, since they could have their live newscasts literally looking down on Dundas Square with the rest of downtown as a backdrop. I'm not sure what the newscast will look like coming from this building. Rogers owns City TV along with a bunch of other TV stations. Looks like my plan to get out of the sun was not successful. These buildings are set back from the street a bit too far to give me some shade. And here's this building again. I pointed this out recently in another video. See, there's a development notice involving these two properties. This building will be demolished quite soon. I think it's already vacant. And that will be replaced by one of those 69-story buildings I was mentioning. Hopefully these don't ever get torn down. Actually, this is just one building. I wonder if anyone has tried to sneak into that building now that it's vacant. It wouldn't surprise me. All right, we're at Church Street. Church Wellesley Village, just down in that direction. It more or less begins right about here, I would say, if you're heading along Church Street. heading towards Yonge Street. There's a cargo bike. At one time, these were considered tall apartment buildings for this neighborhood, but they've been dwarfed by the new wave of much taller residential towers. Those have all popped up in the last 10 to 15 years. These ones popped up mainly in the 1960s for the most part. Some in the late 50s, some in the early 70s. And stuff like this, about 100 years ago, I would say. These nice old walk-up apartment buildings. Brownlee Apartments. I think I'd like to live in something like that, as long as it was affordable and well kept. Here's the Children's Aid Society of Toronto. And here's the last bit of Isabella Street. Ends right ahead at Yonge Street, but here's that little stretch of retail for the last half a block or so. Got some shops and restaurants. The Artful Dodger Pub, it's a very famous establishment in the neighborhood. Got a Rabba location. Got a lineup for this place. The Nutrition Bar. Protein shakes, smoothies, and juices. It's right beside the fitness club, so I think a lot of people are getting their post-workout protein smoothie or their pre-workout. I think that's what that's all about. They probably do great business being located right there. And I think this is one of the least expensive fitness clubs to join. But I'm not going to head onto Yonge Street. From this point, I'll head south here through this linear park. I recently did a walk going north through this linear park after the major snowstorms we had. So we're going to look at it now in snowless conditions going in the opposite direction. A lot more people around. Now we're not walking into the sun. These are cool. Look like swivel chairs here. Yeah, fun. I don't think you ever really outgrow the fun of swiveling around in a chair. Barney's Fountain. I'll have to come back later in the year to see if it's actually turned on. This is quite nice. I think they just completely rehabilitated that part of the linear park. That part was called Norman Jewison Park, named after the Toronto film director who passed away, well, some years back now. Look at that, I see green is sprouting on the branches. Not on any other of the larger trees around though. There's an entrance to Wellesley subway station. I could barely walk through here last time with all the snow, and there were trucks blocking my way. Alright, can I get across? This is Wellesley Street. There's the main entrance to Wellesley subway station. And this time I can actually walk along this walkway. I couldn't last time because of the snow and the cars. That one's starting to get taller. I think it'll top out at 40 stories. These are like the back sides of buildings fronting onto Yonge Street. And just in case you didn't know where you were, although we're not actually on Yonge Street, so that's a bit misleading, but close enough, I guess. Alright, so this is Maitland Street. So I think I'm going to head east now. This will take me to where Mutual Street begins. It's crazy how quickly this part of downtown has been growing with all sorts of tall new buildings. This one is quite nice. It's all covered with ivy. There's a development proposal for this location. This is 49 stories. I think that old building will be preserved. And I remember there used to be an old low-rise walk-up apartment building right here that they tore down. It was white brick. Everyone called it the ghost house. And then there was a fire, and it was boarded up for years. And I always hoped that they would restore it because it had a nice design. As do these ones. But unfortunately the white ghost building, I guess, not house, was demolished. I think it was too badly damaged to restore. I do have at least a couple photos of it though that I took before all that happened. And I think these were some of the first high-rise apartment buildings to be built in this part of downtown in the late 1950s. And I've mentioned it before, but that one over there that's circular shaped was the home to Gordon Lightfoot for a little while in the early 1970s, I believe. I think he wrote some well-known songs while living there. Sundown comes to mind. I'm not sure if that was one of the songs he wrote while living there, but for some reason that song is registering in my head as one of them that might have been written then. All right, we're back at church.
I'm documenting
London, England flag.
So now we're looking up into the village. Last time we were looking down into the village. Unholy donuts. Treat yourself, it says. This is sort of similar to Isabella Street. Just maybe more solidly residential. Although it does have this cool building. Sal Curie Hall, whatever that is. But here's where Mutual Street begins. Or ends. Just like I was talking about Isabella Street, it all depends on which way you're going or coming from. But we're heading south. I think this is one of the more interesting north-south residential side streets. I just like its mix of different housing styles. Got the old row houses or townhouses, historic 19th century era buildings, and modern apartment buildings and condominiums. It also passes through the Toronto Metropolitan University campus just a bit further to the south. I quite like these ones. I think these were the first of the new wave of condo towers to start popping up on the east side of downtown. A more modern style. I think that was well over 20 years ago when those were built. Now they're surrounded by much newer and taller ones. Walking past a schoolyard. I think there's another school right up ahead, a Francophone school. This is Wood Street. That'll take you over to Yonge. Oops, I think I just caught a dog. Watering that fire hydrant. There's that Francophone school. Ooh, very cold wind right here in the shade. And this is Carlton Street. And there's a local landmark across the street in that old historic mansion-like building. I think I can get across here while the cars are not moving. Of course, they start moving, of course, just as you want to cross. But this building is now the home to Oasis Aqua Lounge. I've mentioned this a few times previously. It's a sex club. It's a bit infamous in the neighborhood. Let's see what's on the poster here. Open 7 days a week, 1 p.m. to 3 a.m. Hopefully that picture won't get me demonetized. The sun is very powerful looking in that direction. I purposely chose a route today that would not be entirely made up of walking into the sun, although we did begin in that direction. Somebody was enjoying some watermelon. Look at all the litter here. I'd say that's pretty bad. Old row houses and stepping on random litter. Looks like a major cleanup effort is in need here on Mutual Street. It's ridiculous right here. This was all hidden underneath the snowbanks until recently. But all is revealed now. With this old boarded up townhouse here, it almost makes you think you're in another city. Yes, this is Toronto. I think those old townhouses will be revitalized though. A new development is proposed encompassing this whole site behind the building, including over to Gerrard Street. That might be the end of Peterland though, if that moves forward. That's been there as long as I've been around in this neighborhood. I used to go and get falafels there back when I was going through my falafel phase. And the famous Hooker Harvey's is also on this location, although it's not included. I think the new development will basically be built all around the Hooker Harvey's, but leaving the actual Harvey's restaurant untouched. You can see it just right up ahead there at Jarvis and Gerard. I guess Hooker Harvey's is untouchable. I want to cross Gerard if I can. I'm always a bit bemused by the amount of traffic on Gerard Street. It doesn't strike me as the sort of street that should have so much traffic, but it does. It seems to have more than Carlton Street, which is a more major street in my opinion. And more than Dundas to the south. What is up with Gerard Street? Why? Why is it like this? Alright, these cars aren't moving. They're not moving. They're not moving. It's ridiculous. I'd be standing there for probably 10-15 minutes if I just didn't decide to go. Alright, so now we're walking through the Toronto Metropolitan University campus. It's mostly apartment buildings, housing students. And I think some subsidized housing also in some of these buildings. There's that sun again. And Mutual Street extends south for another 2 or 3 blocks, and it ends at Queen Street. This is another fairly short street. I don't think I'm going to go all the way to the end of Mutual Street this time, because we've arrived here at Gould Street. See the old former Sears Merchandise Warehouse building. But there's a Metro grocery store at the base. And now it's luxury lofts in the upper floors. I think I'm going to wrap things up and head inside this Metro store. So I hope you enjoyed the walk. We took a walk along a few residential streets here on the east side, starting at Isabella Street, heading west almost to Yonge, and south to the Linear Park, to Maitland Street, and then making our way back east until we came upon Mutual Street, where we made our way south here to Gould, to my neighborhood grocery store. I live about a 6-minute walk away from here, I would estimate. So leave a comment down below if you enjoyed the walk, and be sure to like, share, and subscribe if you haven't already done so, and also make sure you hit that notification bell so that you don't miss any of my videos. And if you'd like to support the channel, there are links in the description where you can do so via PayPal as well as via my merch store. Or you can also support the channel by becoming a channel member or by sending a super thanks if you prefer. And you can find me on Instagram also under K Continuum as I get out of the sun. So thanks for watching, and thanks to all the channel members. And be sure to keep checking back, because as always, I will continue.